Hi there, it's Claire. If you're hearing me, that means you're listening to the free preview of one of our Patreon episodes. We switch off every week between free and Patreon exclusive episodes, so if you'd like to hear the rest of this conversation, head over to patreon.com/thisguysucked and join our honorary haters club. Hi, everybody. We normally have sensitive topics listed in our episode description, and they're here today too, so go look. But I wanted to highlight before you listen to it that today's episode, I think, needs kind of a major content warning because the entire episode is about sexual assault. It's not described in detail, so we don't need to worry about that. But this woman's historical story revolves around her sexual assault and resulting navigation of the medieval legal system. So I wanted to give you all a heads up since I don't think this one can be sort of relegated to the description alone. Either way, it's a really wonderful conversation, and I think listeners will get a lot out of it. And we talk about some really, really important stuff here. So hopefully this doesn't deter you in any way from listening. Just wanted to give you a heads up that that's what's going on here. On to the episode. Welcome to This Guy Sucked, the show where we prove that it's never too late to have haters and you can't libel the dead. I'm your host, Dr. Claire Aubin, and I'm a historian, writer, and most importantly, certified hater. On this show, we talk about people from throughout history with legacies that need a little updating. Whether it's because of their politics, their behavior, or their impact on society and culture, these guys actually kind of sucked. And we bring in a new scholar every week to tell us why. Except today, we're doing one of our occasional This Guy/Gal Rocked ? Episodes to remind you all that, hey, people can be remembered for a variety of reasons, and there are some people who aren't properly remembered, but should be, perhaps. With me today is Sara McDougall, who is a professor of history at the John Jay College of Criminal Justice and the CUNY Graduate Center. She's a medievalist who thinks and writes a lot about, please correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, gender, sex, love, marriage, and crime in the Middle Ages, as well as justice, also ? On that one. She's written a few books on the above topics, including Bigamy and Christian Identity in Late Medieval Champagne, Royal Bastards, The Birth of Illegitimacy, 800 to 1230, and the book that we are talking about today, which is now available for pre-order and releasing next month in September, Justice for Jehanne, The Tale of a Medieval Survivor. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Claire. It's so great to be here.
I'm very excited to get to do this one. We've been looking for what's the right next This Guy Rocked or This Gal Rocked episode. And when we came across this, because I was also looking for some medieval topics, we had done so many 19th century guys that I was like, a perfect opportunity to do this.
Yeah, no, this is a gal and she rocked. So
this is a gal and she rocked. I asked Craig Perry, who works on medieval Jewish groups in Egypt, but I asked Craig Perry this recently, so I'm going to give you the same question. If you could magically dispel or change or fix any way that people typically think about the medieval period without needing to write books about it, so you could just magically do this, what would you change?
I would change. Oh, wow. So many things. Oh, this is like a huge, okay, one thing, only one thing. There's so many things.
If it's helpful, this episode isn't out yet, but Craig said he would change the use of the term medieval in popular vocabulary to be like, oh, that's torture, that's medieval torture, and this is totally medieval.
I mean, I guess it's what people think women's experiences were. That is my special area of concern. So if I have to pick one and just one, that would be the one. There are just so many misconceptions about what women's experiences were in medieval Europe, just to generalize, about several centuries and several different regions and places. But it's just that there's such a standard notion that is so pervasive, and it matters because it's so dangerous, because it's used as a weapon against women and girls today. If there was any way to change that so that the people we hate could could not have the Middle Ages to point to and say, we've always done this. So, or like, it's better now. Look what we used to do. I think that would make my life more pleasant. It would make my teaching a little easier. It would make some arguments with my colleagues a little less fraught.
I'm sure. I've been thinking about this, obviously, this book, which we'll get to, but like it comes up in a lot of different ways. But there was something like, I don't want to be too obvious what I'm talking about, but there was like a web series from this like sort of educational nonprofit that was on the history of sex and sexuality. And they
Oh,
had a sex educator be the person presenting and probably writing it instead of a historian. And they start with medieval sex. And I, like, 2 minutes in, was like, this is wrong. Like, I know this is wrong. This is absolutely, because there are several books by people like yourself or like Eleanor Yanaga who are like writing about medieval sex and women and being like, this is just straight up not what was happening, but it's what we have sort of retconned into believing was happening.
no.
So I watched this and I was like, oh my God, there are thousands of people watching this right now and thinking that they're like really learning good history of sex stuff. That's
Yeah.
just not true. And I was like, I can't watch
It
this.
hurts. No, no, no. I mean,
Yeah.
and I can't tell you the number of times I've tried to collaborate. And well, actually, no, I could probably tell you because it hasn't been that many, but I try very often to work in collaboration and communication with scientists and say, you teach me, I teach you. I respect your discipline. I hope you could respect mine. And there's all kinds of really successful models of this. I mean,
Hmm.
there's people who work on mostly in the history of science stuff, but there's all of this stuff for the early Middle Ages where there are these immensely fascinating and fabulous collaborations where they've been able to totally reconstruct our understanding of like Merovingian identity and all of these early medieval peoples and what their ethnicity was. And they do that because they're talking to each other and they're respecting each other's expertise. And yes, I have tried to do that myself in both ideas about sex, but ideas about marriage and
Hmm.
family and the Catholic Church. And there's a lot. Yeah, now my list is going to have to grow of all of the things I want to change about what people think about the Middle Ages. I can't just have one.
You just want to fix all of it, basically. If you can. Well, this actually is a good sort of segue into what we're actually talking about, I think, because I feel, and you can tell me if this is not the takeaway that you want me to get from the book, but I feel like in Justice for Jehanne, a lot of the takeaway is basically being like, whatever you imagine sex to look like, violence to look like, the agency of women to look like, unless you're a medievalist, it's probably not right. And this one case helps to encapsulate not all of that, but a lot of these things. So, who are you talking with me about today?
Yeah, before I answer that, I have to say
Sure.
the other thing is
Mm.
even medievalists don't know the things that you can learn from reading this book, by which I mean from what you can learn by listening to Jeanne, who is the subject of this book, because what I tried to do was to really bring her voice to the front. And it is by listening to her that you learn that you're getting it wrong, you're getting it wrong, you're getting it wrong. And I fear it is also my dearly beloved colleagues in medieval studies who also think these things and don't even realize that they're thinking these things. It's just there in the back of their mind for all kinds of interesting reasons, which we could psychoanalyze, among other things. But anyway, but you asked me about Jeanne, so I will tell you about Jeanne.
Yeah,
I have to begin with a tiny bit of pedantry. I don't know. I have
sure.
a very complicated methodology that I used to write this book that I agonized over in trying to think about how I could make present for readers what I was seeing when I was sitting in the archives in Dijon, in France, and looking at this archival record of testimony. So What we know most fundamentally is what this guy named Jacques Boristel wrote down, who was the investigator who put these words on paper. But what he wrote is what she said. And we know that because he had to read it back to her and she had to confirm it. And so these are her words translated from her spoken language into his written language. And so obviously he's going to be doing whatever he was doing, but enough of it, especially, if you if you go to the appendix of the book, you see that it's very hard to imagine a legal man, coming up with this all himself. Right?
Yeah.
This is a woman talking about herself. And it's so special to have that from the Middle Ages. I mean, obviously she's not talking freely. This isn't a diary, this isn't letters, but this is what she wanted, or at least what she was willing to say was her account of what happened to her and her life under oath. People obviously talk differently about themselves when they're standing in front of legal authorities or in front of police,
Sure.
but this is what she confirmed were her words. And so it's really special because we don't have a lot of testimony like this, and certainly not both about what happened, but also about who this person is, who she wants to be understood as. And she is our only source about herself, because she's an ordinary sort of person in that she's neither, she's not a princess, she's not Joan of Arc, she's not, she's not a mystic, she's not a heretic, she's a human being who happened to end up in this situation, but decided that she was willing to participate in a legal proceeding, and a terrifying one. So that is a very long way of saying that what we know about her is what she said primarily. And what she said was that she was a woman named Jehanne from the Lorraine region of France, and that she'd come from that region in the 1470s and ended up living in Dijon, which was the capital city of the Duchy of Burgundy at the time. And that while she was there, in late stages of pregnancy, and I assume that there will be a warning about content at some point before people listen to this, or they can access it at some point. But I'm going to talk about a sexual assault. So at some point late in pregnancy, she was sexually assaulted, abducted and sexually assaulted. And the next morning, she testified about what had happened to her and her willingness to act against these men who had been terrorizing the neighborhood she lived in. Made it possible for an unbelievably involved and complicated legal proceeding to follow, in which she testified 4 times at least. We have her testimony 4 different times, which is, again, I mean, you don't have this, and you have her talking about all of that, and then you have as well an investigation into who she was and what her neighbors had to say about her. And so you have 20 people telling us about this woman. And so that is why she rocked.
I mean, there's to some extent that why she rocks is like she's willing to put herself through. How do I explain this? She rocks in a way that, and this is not to diminish her in any way, but in a sort of quotidian way, if that makes sense. Like she's not someone who goes and changes the world. She's not doing something that nobody else on the planet has ever done. It's none of those things, but it's like this thing where she does something brave, and somehow that brave thing makes its way through the archive to us hundreds of years later. This like not small act of bravery. I don't think there's such thing, but like this brave thing that she does and goes through repeatedly enough to give testimony several times. And that is like this thing where you say, this is a real person who existed in the way that you or I exist right now, made a choice that someone that we may know or someone presently at this very moment is making. And we have evidence of that we can think through and help us understand the time she was living in, and also like how people cope with difficulties. And that's amazing.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. I mean, and that's exactly what I want people to see. I mean, this is not someone who's trying to change the world. She's just trying to live her life, but live her life according to her own values and choices. And so she's choosing to participate in this investigation for whatever reasons, but she's standing up for herself. She's defending her choices. She says even how she wanted the perpetrators to be punished. So she's telling the legal authorities how she wants them to handle her own case. This is a very special person who has all kinds of fascinating strategies for how to make her way in this often pretty rotten world that she was living in. And she knew that the legal system kind of sucked. I mean, it didn't suck in the way that people often think. I mean, what people tend to think, I think, is that justice in the Middle Ages, judicial authorities would not have had any interest in helping out some migrant woman from the Lorraine or like basically any woman, right?
Mm-hmm.
That justice was there to kick women when they were down. But that is not at all what happens with Jeanne, and it's not at all what happened with these other people who we can read about because the archival records for Dijon are so incredibly rich. I mean, this judicial system was perfectly willing to try to help women who came to it and said, you know, something bad happened to me. They were just not very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
They were just not very powerful and they were not very effective. They did not have the ability to act against most people. And they also had a very complicated system of justice and mercy and, you know, letting things go that sometimes works out well for women. It often worked out well for women, but did not necessarily work out for women in that so many people who are accused of no matter what crime end up not being prosecuted and punished.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that sucks.
Thanks for listening to this preview of a Patreon exclusive episode. To subscribe and listen to it in full, head over to patreon.com/thisguysucked.